Okay, very good. Council, of course, this is a interesting time due to the COVID situation. We have to broadcast this meeting and receive comments through email, but we'll go ahead and commence. This is the Mayor's Agenda Special Call City Council meeting of Wednesday, April 1st, 2020, 5 p.m., City Hall of Council Chambers. I'll remind all members to please speak clearly into the mic so that the audio is fed electronically. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Dobson.
Here.
Councilmember Cogdill.
Here.
Mayor Hark.
Here.
Councilmembers Bowen,
Here.
Welch,
Here.
and Beach.
Here.
Okay, there being a quorum, I would call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda under my name is removal of Board of Public Works board members of Stephen Franke and Steve Smith. I will defer to the Councilor James Lemon to give an update on the timeline on the sequence of events here. James.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, as you know, I had shared with you some recent events, and I think in order for the council to understand why you thought it was very important to put this on for special call, that I run through what the timeline was. On March 24th, I received a phone call from Stephen Franke advising me that the interim director of the Board of Public Works did not believe that they should cease dosing ammonia as required by law, and that they were considering not doing that. I felt like he was calling to ask me my legal opinion. I told him I thought that was a very, very bad idea. I advised him that I thought that would be a violation of the law. We talked fairly briefly about what the reasons were for that. My legal opinion to him at that time was that I urged him not to support such action unless it had been already specifically authorized by the council, or at least he had reached out to council and gotten some indicator that they would be willing to take the matter up at the next council meeting and extend the deadline. I believe he reached out to you on that same day, and I base that belief on the fact that on March 25th, I was CC'd in with an email from him to you that made some comment regarding that he had already been talking to you, and they set out their concerns, and I believe everyone has seen that email. On March the 25th, then, the city manager sent that email out to all the council and specifically requested they not discuss via email, but that if they had questions, they could reach out to her with any questions or comments. I know Councilperson Cogdill reached out to Mr. Franke on 3/26 because I saw that email. I don't know what their conversation was. I know Mayor Pro Tem Dobson reached out to Mr. Franke on the afternoon of March the 29th with some concerns, and he expressed, I thought, in fairly great detail what his reasons were, and expressed to Mr. Franke that he would not support waiving fines if they decided not to dose the ammonia. On March the 29th at 7:09, Mr. Franke emailed Mayor Pro Tem Dobson back, and he did CC me in on that email where he advised that he appreciated his concerns, but the BPW had decided to continue dosing ammonia. On the same day, a little bit later at 8:25, the city manager informed Mr. Franke by email that a majority of the council had indicated they weren't interested in taking up an extension of the deadline at a meeting. On then March 29th, apparently Mr. Franke did try to call me, but my phone was dead actually, so I didn't get the call from him. But he also emailed me. And so on the morning of 3:30, that's Monday, this was the 29th was Sunday, on the morning of the 30th, after I looked at all the emails, I emailed Stephen and I said just very simply, in my legal opinion, you need to shut off the ammonia. His response to me was, we will be acting in the best interest of the public's health and safety. There's nothing we take more seriously than that. He said nothing further. I took that email to mean that he didn't care to have me explain why my legal opinion was that, and they were choosing to ignore my advice. At that point, I had a conversation with Councilman Bowen, who had previously contacted me via email asking me what the situation was. I spoke to Councilman Bowen. I expressed to him what I thought options were, if he wanted to take options. He expressed to me that he believed he was probably going to request that we put it on the regular session agenda to remove Mr. Franke as a board member, and I think he started that process.
What was the date on that?
That's on Monday. That's on March the 30th. Then at 2 o'clock that same day on Monday, I emailed Mr. Franke again, and I advised him of the legal consequences of their actions and the fact that I believe that Councilman Bowen might well put an agenda item on to remove him, and I further believe that the interim manager was going to be fined every day under the ordinance. At 5:11, Mr. Franke responded, "Thanks for the advice. It's truly appreciated." Said nothing further. On March the 31st, the next day, at 5:17 a.m., Mr. Franke sent me an email in which he had CC'd in Steve Smith and Bill Fisher, the two other board members, and he asked for an explanation of what the removal process would be if, in fact, Mr. Bowen put that on the agenda. I responded later that morning with an explanation of what the process was, basically what we're doing here. I also again attempted to explain my legal opinion at this time to all of them. And what I specifically said was, one last thing that you should realize is that with respect, I do not think there's sufficient legal basis for not shutting off the ammonia. As a result, it is my legal opinion your actions in directing the interim manager to ignore the law and ignore the city's clear directive are a breach of your fiduciary duty. I got no response from Mr. Franke on that. The response I got from Steve Smith was a fairly hostile manner in which he accused the council of making decisions solely based on politics rather than based on the safety of the public. I responded at that point in time and told them that the following facts. One, that at this point in time, no one at the water plant or even at the HBPW in general has COVID-19, and following the timeline which was set out by the interim manager would quite frankly put us potentially out into a time when they were less able to deal with problems than they would be now, that if we would go ahead and start things, that we would have more ability to deal with hiccups rather than to stall and delay. And I pointed out to them that much of the public would probably see some of this as a stall tactic. I pointed out to them again that the staff of the water plant, as they have said publicly multiple times, was ready to go ahead and do this right now. And they stood ready to do it, and there was the only reason they had not done it was at the direct instruction of the interim manager. I did concede in that email that there were some concerns regarding customer relations matters based on the way the board has decided not to have people working, but I did provide for them several suggestions of ways they could do with that, such as having customer service reps work from home, using a voice over IP system, et cetera, et cetera. I pointed out to the board members that a promise was made to the people of Hannibal by the board that this system would be turned on a date certain, and that in order to live up to the public trust, this needed to be done. And I also then advised them that I did not think this council had taken matters seriously, and I was quite sure that all of these factors had been taken into consideration by you all when you had chosen not to express to him that you would be willing to add that to your agenda. I got no response from any of the board members, so I went to lunch at about 2 o'clock. When I got back at 3 o'clock, I had a phone call from an attorney at the firm of Jackson Lewis. And that's a firm that, in case the council doesn't remember, has done some other work for us at the Board of Public Works. And actually, there's an argument are probably representing us right now. She expressed to me that the board had retained her firm to file a temporary restraining order against the city. I was a little surprised. I expressed to her my concerns of the following issues. Number one, the board did not have the authority to hire an attorney. Second, that the board certainly would not have the authority to pay an attorney. And third, that such action would probably be a violation of their fiduciary duty to us, they being that law firm, since they had an ongoing matter. She expressed to me that she had not been told the entire situation and that they would not be going ahead and entering on that case. So that TRO was not filed. However, I felt I needed to inform the mayor of this at this point in time, because here's the problem. The only thing that these board members had been informed of was that we were intending to obey the law, that the city manager was going to issue fines for not obeying the law, and that probably there was going to be a lawful vote by this council to decide whether or not Mr. Franke should be removed. Their response to that was to attempt to get a court to order you not to obey the law and not to exercise your legal right to remove someone. Most concerning to me was the fact that they tried to do that without legal authority, and they tried to do that using your money, the city's money, to do that. In my opinion, it's a violation of their fiduciary duty, and it is something that it is absolutely something that entitles the city to remove those board members by law. As a result, the mayor asked me to draft an appropriate resolution that would address it with the two board members who had addressed these things with me and had taken this position against the fiduciary duty of the city, and that is in your packet. And I'm ready to answer any questions.
Well, real quick, before we have any questions here, Madam Clerk, have you received any emails from individuals in our community regarding this, wishing to have a question before us in this matter?
I have nothing at this time. I received 2 telephone calls this afternoon. One who I advised to submit an email and it would be presented to you. I gave him your email address, mine, and all of council. And the other one, it was a call from Mr. Stephen Franke. I returned his call, received his voicemail, and advised that he was welcome to attend the meeting this evening, and advised that the meeting would be at 5 o'clock and that there is a doorbell on the door and he would need to ring it as the door is kept locked due to the restriction of public access to the building.
Okay, and do you have any emails to this?
I just checked and I do not have any emails.
Okay. Mr. Franke does not appear here right
Mayor?
now.
I may say that I was contacted by Mr. Franke, and I was unaware of that he could attend the night. I assumed that the council chambers was quarantined as the posting of the door, and I told him that there was electronic media that would be available tonight, so that if he had questions, that he may, send those electronically.
That way as well. What time did you speak with him? Or just about, because your call was at 3:45, 3:50?
I would say very close to 4 o'clock, if not after.
Okay.
Mayor, Mr. Franke texted me at 3:11 p.m. asking me if he would be allowed to comment. He indicated he had spoken to Mr. Dobson already. I responded, yes, call Angel and request you be allowed to speak. And he responded, I put a call into the clerk. They're going to call me back. Thank you for responding.
Mr. Franke is, in fact, watching on YouTube.
Okay, good, good.
It looks like about 2:46 or so, thereabouts, that I corresponded with him in
My
reference to the
voicemail was
meeting.
left after that.
Okay, I just want to make sure, that opportunity is there. So I try to be fair. Mr. Lemon, I appreciate the timeline and the update there. I believe it to be a fair representation of the timeline and discussions thus far. Discussion at this point before the council. Anyone up here have anything that they wish to discuss before I
think I do. I was urged by Mr. Franke to call Matt Munslinger and talk to him about the technicalities of shutting off the ammonia. And I had a conversation with him this afternoon, and I wish that he would have talked to all the council members before this incident occurred. I found out that, on purpose because of the COVID-19, that they've got their staffing cut in half, that they're trying to, socially distance their employees so that at least that they have half of their crew remaining should, something happen. Might also point out that our hospital here has only checked, 60 people for COVID-19, which I think about 3 are positive. I wasn't on the coalition call today. There's more now. Okay.
or another?
Okay.
There's 4, but it's in Randolph County.
Okay, I was going to say none of which are in Marion County, and I
Right.
think our numbers are arbitrarily low because the hospital's not doing very many tests. So there may be more out there than what's believed. But in trying to run the Board of Public Works, they're doing much as City Hall is, trying to isolate their people so that, should this virus strike, that operations can still proceed, from day-to-day operations, trying to protect the city. He went on to say that the water would be different, because it'll have different taste and it'll have different smells at time, and that it won't switch all at once. He said it may present as cloudy water, which may require their crews to go out and flush different neighborhoods. When you flush and open up fire plugs to flush, you always run the risk of rupturing lines and have main breaks, which would require people to come in and fix, potentially have their crews intermingle. There's healthcare processes that I didn't think of that could be affected by the water changeover. The dialysis process is very critical to water. And as you all know, we've got a dialysis center just on the west edge of town, DeVita. He said other health cares and nursing homes can be affected by the water changeover. And by those, I had an idea that they could test homes from the outside. The residual chlorine test is a fairly easy test. It requires running water for about 5 minutes, and it's a color test to establish if free chlorine is still present in that sample. And I thought that they could do it from the outside of the house using a hose bib for that. I was texted earlier in the day, and they are actually required, and I assume by MoDNR, to take those samples from the actual tap. If they take those samples from the actual tap, that would put them inside the home instead of outside the home, with potential for exposure to COVID-19 again. So had I known all of that, my opinion for shutting off the ammonia and delaying based on the COVID virus probably would have been different.
Mayor, a couple of points. One, in my email to the 3 board members, I addressed all those issues with them, and they chose not to respond to any of those issues. I pointed out to them, for instance, I didn't read my entire email to you because it was long, because I wanted to try to be fair with them, and I wanted to try to give all the points. But for instance, I said, Point 5 in my email was, if the issue is concerns for water samples potentially being taken at residence by HBPW employees, that doesn't need to happen. Sample tubes could be dropped off or provided for pickup at the board offices. Once the sample was taken, homeowners can then drop off or otherwise deliver to the board offices. There's absolutely no reason why there would need to be direct interaction. We're not talking about acid. People can run tap water in a tube, cap it, and drop it at the board offices if they have concerns. That's one example. My other level of frustration is this. This is not about whether there was a decision to put it on council agenda. You know, that ship has sailed. Where I had a concern and why I brought it to the mayor's attention is you have a board that took it upon themselves to decide that they could sue the city and stop you from taking legal action by using court action and make you pay for it. That is absolutely a violation of their fiduciary duty. Further, in order for them to come to that decision, that means they had to have a meeting. Did any of you see anything where they had a public meeting where they decided to meet with their lawyer? No, you did not. That is an intentional violation of the Sunshine Law, which could open each one of them up to a $10,000 fine for an intentional violation, and also a violation which could further be construed to the city of Hannibal. These were the issues why I brought it to the mayor's attention, and these were my concerns. It is no longer about the decision about shutting off the ammonia. It has to do with failing to recognize their fiduciary duty, taking actions directly against the interests of the city, and also violating the Sunshine Law.
Did they in fact file that motion?
They didn't file it because their attorney, who they had hired apparently by phone, and I don't know how Stefan could have done it by himself, and I was advised the board, so a board decision was made to retain this attorney because this attorney told me she had been retained, and I explained to her she had not been retained because they did not have authority to retain her, nor did they have funds at their disposal to retain her. So the only reason that TRO did not get filed was because I made it clear to the attorney that, in fact, they didn't have the legal authority to do what they had purported to do, and that further, it was, in my opinion, a violation of that law firm's ethical duties to us, and that I anticipated if such a TRO was filed by that firm, that you all would request that I file a bar complaint. And that firm had not been informed of what the actual situation was, and they said, well, we obviously are not going to proceed forward on this TRO. Now, whether they have consulted with other attorneys, whether they have advised other attorneys that they have the legal authority to sue you, whether they're intending to legally sue you or not, I don't know, but that's one of the concerns that the mayor had, was that remove all question of whether or not they have the authority to sue you or to hire attorneys to sue you. If they are no longer board members, then very clearly they have no right to use the city's money to sue it. That is not to say that they don't have individual rights as taxpayers. If they wanted to bring such an action, they could have done so in their individual capacity. However, that's not what they tried to do. They tried to sue the city in a TRO as the board of the Hannibal Board of Public Works, and that is absolutely a violation of their fiduciary duty.
I have an email from Sunday. It was passed through the email chain here, and it actually says exactly what Mike was saying earlier about putting the staff in homes and the water mains breaking. And that seems pretty much like a good reason, although the point of this is they did directly do something that we told them not to. I see all the reasons for it. I personally don't think that this is publicly a good idea to remove someone from office, plant new people in there. I would actually rather had seen an opportunity for the people that were in the position to resign instead of be impeached. I'd still like to see that, actually.
Well, and Councilman, to address a couple of those points, I absolutely, before they filed the TRO, I suggested that, I think my exact email to Stefan was, I see no path to victory here for you. I anticipate that Councilman Bowen is going to put this on the floor. I will have no choice but to inform the council of things which I feel are breaches of fiduciary duty, and I would recommend that you may want to consider resigning, and he refused. He told me he would not. And I would also point out to you that on several occasions, several emails, I sent trying to get some discussion about their legal needs and legal intent, and what I got back was, thanks for your advice. And I was very frustrated with that. I'll be very frank. I consider every one of those gentlemen to be friends of mine, and I quite frankly was trying to bend over backwards to try to give them an opportunity to not violate their fiduciary duty. I don't care, quite frankly, whether the ammonia was turned on or off, other than the fact that there is an ordinance. They're city officials. They're bound by that ordinance unless they take other action. You don't wait until you can't get it on the council agenda and then show up a week before you're supposed to do it and say, hey, we've decided not to turn off the ammonia. That puts the council in a bad position. It puts the Board of Public Works in a bad position. If they knew they had these concerns, the concerns should have been raised. Again, one of my points to the board in my email was, at no point has anyone said that the board is not going to provide safe water to the public. If that's the issue, you need to have the interim director say that, and I will take that to the board, to the council. At no point did I get any response where they said, no, we can't deliver safe water. And I don't know why they would not take that action if in fact the issue is we can't deliver safe water, because clearly safe water is a separate issue. But that's not the problem. My concern and my frustration here, and the reason why I brought it to the mayor, is the issue that they waited until the last second. And I don't mean the board. I mean the director of the Board of Public Works waited to bring his concerns to his board until it was too late for you all to get it on an agenda and put you in a place where you were going to have to make a snap decision that you were going to tell people that they did not have to obey a law which was passed, and which was passed a long time ago. Everybody's known it was coming. Everybody knew it was going to hit. Now, I don't mean to sit here and just wool them around and beat them up, but I'm saying to say, well, it just happened. Oh, it just occurred to us. That's a problem, issue number one. And issue number two is when you're told, well, they're not really interested in that. They'd really like you to continue with this, rather than have a discussion with the city attorney about, well, this is why, and we have safety concerns and blah, blah, blah. Instead, their action was to not respond to my emails and to just say, we're going to instruct the manager to violate the law. That's why I have a concern.
If they had that concern and they expressed that concern to us that they wouldn't provide safe water, we would have had to do an emergency roll meeting on Tuesday instead of today.
Correct.
They did turn the ammonia off, though.
Correct. The ammonia's off.
By deadline.
By the deadline.
So now the fact that we're still going through with impeaching 2 members and planting new ones in their place is, to me, fundamentally wrong. It looks exactly like the good old boy system that everyone accuses us of.
And look, I can't tell you what to do, and I certainly wouldn't suppose to do so. A couple of points. One, this isn't an impeachment. An impeachment is a separate issue. An impeachment would be one where there is a trial regarding wrongdoing, et cetera, but that's not what our charter says. Our charter says you may remove them by impeachment, or upon a resolution by 5 votes, that person can be removed. So this technically isn't an impeachment, because an impeachment would be done a different way. But, and I understand your point, but I'm being legalistic. But the point is, it's not about whether the ammonia is on, off, or indifferent. The point is, you have a board who decided that they had the power to use your money to sue you. That is an action taken against their fiduciary duty. They have a duty of loyalty to this city. They violated that duty of loyalty. Now, if it is this council's position that it's okay to violate the duty of loyalty, I understand. That's why the mayor asked me to do the resolution, was because they had violated a duty of loyalty, issue number 1. Issue number 2, they had a secret closed meeting in violation of the Sunshine Law, which puts the city in further jeopardy. Those are the 2 issues that we wanted to call to your attention, and that's what you would be voting on, not an issue of whether they turned the ammonia on or off. It has to do with the violation of their duty, their disloyalty to the city, and the fact that they had a secret meeting, decided to hire an attorney, and in fact attempted to hire an attorney, and the only reason that attorney didn't sue you is because they picked an attorney that had a specific conflict, which I made that attorney aware of. If they had chosen some other attorney or some other law firm, we would be having a much different conversation. We would be having a conversation right now where there was a TRO lawsuit filed against you, and we'd be talking about how we were going to address that.
Okay, I had a email from Stefan earlier that it was his idea to investigate the lawyer thing. He conferred individually with their board members. There was no meeting. I've conferred individually with the mayor today. I've sent several of you emails. Those aren't illegal communications.
And
He called and investigated what a lawsuit might look like, and what the opportunities were thereof. And you said that nothing was filed. So it was investigated, but nothing was filed.
That's actually not correct, Mayor Pro Tem. You've been misled. I was specifically told by this attorney, both in a verbal conversation and in an email, I have been retained by the Board of Public Works. No attorney sends another attorney an email saying, I have been retained, unless they believe they've been retained. They can take a position now that wasn't a meeting, and I don't care whether they sat down in a room, and that's the problem with the Sunshine Law, and that's what I've been trying to get across to people for years and years and years, is you don't have to be sitting in the same room. If you had a phone conversation, if you exchanged emails, and a decision was made, that's the key. Was a decision made, then that's an invalid meeting, and that's a void meeting. Conversations where just you and the mayor talk, or where the mayor and maybe a couple of people talk, that's a separate issue. It could be argued that it's approaching a line, but it's not over the line. What's over the line is when sufficient people to reach a quorum talk about it and come to a decision, and that is a violation. No attorney says that they've been retained unless they've been retained. This was not an exploration. The only reason the TRO was not filed was because that attorney had already talked to the judge. I was told at 3 o'clock the judge wants to have a talk with us about this temporary restraining order. And I'm like, whoa, calm down, wait a minute. You can't do that. And when I expressed the reasons why it couldn't been done, that attorney said, okay, I'm not going to represent them, but I will also say that attorney advised that after having talked with them, that she believed they would probably still move forward. Whether they move forward now or not, I don't know. But the mayor's concern was if you leave them in place, you run the risk that a temporary restraining order will in fact be filed against you at a later date.
And furthermore, my large concern I had at this point, after it was obvious the council was not going to give an extension, my concern
By a
was,
vote, by email.
my concern at that point,
Well, I don't
that
think
we
anybody
weren't-
voted, we responded.
No.
I don't know how you did.
okay.
I responded to
I
Lisa.
technically
To
didn't vote,
Lisa's
no.
email. I didn't
right.
respond to anybody else.
Sure.
Lisa asked
Right.
us to.
And I did not
And
share.
so I didn't
Right.
vote. I told Lisa
Sure.
my opinion.
but bottom line, if there's an ordinance in place and this council has not given an extension, I am not going to place myself in a position of violating the ordinance or giving anyone the okay to do an extension. Therefore, that call had to be made, and it was, and they did shut off the ammonia last night after an email was sent, tongue-in-cheek and quite candidly, to the effect of, you won. And I believe that was directed to Councilman Dobson at first. You won, we're turning it off. Good. That satisfies our legal obligation. But what gives me heartburn is when someone that serves at the pleasure of this council doesn't like the decision that we make by enforcing our ordinance, take it upon themselves to turn around and try to get a restraining order. I'm sorry, don't pee on my shoes and tell me it's raining. I'm not buying it. There is the fact that either way would have probably been the correct answer, leaving the ammonia on or turning it off. I get not wanting to risk personnel, but I can damn well guarantee you I'm risking personnel with the police and fire every day, full force, full staff. In fact, some of them are on overtime. So don't tell me that essential city service can't be carried out. I refuse to believe that, and I won't. I've made it clear in the statements for people to shelter in place. I've made it clear to people how to limit their exposure, but that essential city services will continue. And lights, water, and power is going to be there. Is there any other discussion?
Mayor, so I received the original email on the 25th. I did place an email. I meant to place it to Matt, and apparently I put Stefan in by mistake with it. But and I did phone Matt and speak with Matt personally on the phone and ask him about some of the questions I had. And at that point, I think I was under the understanding that we would probably have a delay, and that I think I assumed that we would probably have a delay. And then I believe it was on Sunday I received some different information, and then that's when I spoke with Lisa and told her that I would prefer that we go ahead and uphold the ordinance. I recommended Stefan and I recommended Steve, and I have great respect for both of them, and I think they have done a great job in some times of some really big trouble at the board, and
I agree.
they've done very, very well. This is not about ammonia to me. I'm an elected official by the citizens of the third ward, and they elect me to make decisions on their behalf. And sometimes I make the right decision, and sometimes I make the wrong, and I agree wholeheartedly. We had two right decisions in this situation. The delay would have been the right decision, and the shut-off would have been the right decision. So I do my best to make the best decisions that I can for the citizens that elected me. And I do so knowing that I have a staff that will carry out whatever the majority of the vote is. And I have to depend on the staff to carry out what the council asks them to do, and I have to have trust in them. And to me, this is about, I trusted them to carry out the decision of the council, and I feel like it was an absolute refusal to do so. I hate this, I think, as much as everybody else sitting up on this platform right now. This is probably one of the hardest things I've done since I've been on council. But, trust is hard to gain and it's easy to lose. And unfortunately, at this point, I feel like I've lost a little faith in the representation. And so, therefore, I would be in favor of removing both board members.
Okay, then we have before us resolution number 2253-20. Have you received any other email questions?
Check.
Before I go any further. Councilperson Cogdell, have you received any emails?
I will check right now. I had not just a moment ago, but please let me check again just to make sure I have not. Check my junk folder just to make sure I'm not missing it. And I, Mayor, have not received any emails.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? I will call we have resolution 2253-20. I'd ask the clerk to read this resolution and call the roll for adoption. Is there a motion?
Luke?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Cogdell,
Yes.
Mayor Hark,
Yes.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
Councilmember Welch,
No.
Councilmember Veach. So it does carry for me to read the resolution.
Okay.
Resolution number 2253-20, a resolution of the City of Hannibal removing Stephen Franke and Steve Smith from their positions as members of the Hannibal Board of Public Works pursuant to the provisions of Section 11.03 of the Charter of the City of Hannibal. Mayor Pro Tem Dobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Cogdell,
Yes.
Mayor Hark,
Yes.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
Councilmember Welch,
No.
Councilmember Veach.
Yes.
5. Motion carries.
Five is what the ordinance says, so that is a removal.
Motion carried.
Okay. Move to the next agenda item. Lisa Peck, City Manager.
Yes, I have before you the appointment of William Dees to the Hannibal Board of Public Works. He's already had his first reading, so this would be actually appointing him.
Okay, and that's a term to expire July of 2020.
Yes, correct.
There a motion to approve Mr. William Dees for appointment to an unexpired term to expire July of 2020. This is second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Then I also have to put forth a nomination for appointment of John M. Zerbonia for a term, an unexpired term to expire July of 2023. Mr. Zavonia is a Hannibal native and graduate of Hannibal High School. He has formerly served in the U.S. Navy, and after his military service, he joined the Hannibal Police Department, where he retired in 2019 after 20 years of service, having attained the position and rank of Lieutenant Assistant Chief. During his time with the Hannibal Police Department, he served for numerous years on the Police and Fire Pension Board and on time for the City Employee Benefits Trust Board.
Okay, and you're requesting that as a emergency approval appointment?
It would be for a first
It's gonna be
reading,
for a
Mayor.
first reading.
We had originally thought that that might be appropriate if the council voted in favor on the other resolution. However, upon a review of the charter, the appointment may not be made until 7 days after the first presentation to the council. So if the council so chooses, anytime after 7 days, we can put it on the agenda again and take it up then.
Okay. Thank you for keeping us on
Well,
the path. That's what I,
Mayor, I was the one who first said I thought we could do it on emergency reading, but I'm always doubting myself, and I went back and read the charter and realized I was wrong. So that's the amazing thing, is that I admitted I was wrong, but I was.
Damn, I'm going to put that on my calendar.
okay, so that is up for just the first reading. Obviously, it'll come back again before us at the next regularly scheduled meeting. Council, at this time, I would ask for a motion to go into closed session in accordance with RSMO 610.021, paragraph 3, admitting myself, council, city manager, city attorney, city clerk. I believe that's everyone at this point. And Mr. Zabonia. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Please.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Dobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Cogdill,
Yes.
Mayor Hark,
Yes.
Councilmembers Bowen,
Yes.
Welch,
Yes.
and Beach.
Very good. We'll go into closed session now. For those of you viewing online, I appreciate your patience and persistence through all of this. We hopefully will come out on the other side and do well within a few months. I wish I had a timeline of when this all will be over, but everyone stay in, stay safe, and take care of your family. Thank you.
You know, this being April 1st, you know, when it comes back around on the calendar that James was wrong, he's going to say it's April Fool's.
It was an April Fool's.
That's it.
It was April. I was just joking. I'm never wrong. Except when I'm at 2